The sensor screen blinked with a strange signal, and Jothik stopped moving. His tentacles froze over the control panel as numbers scrolled across the display. Something was wrong. No, not wrong exactly. Something was different. Very different. He had been working on the Velcora scout ship for 8 years now. His job was simple and usually boring. He watched screens, looking for planets that might support life. Most days, he found nothing but rocks and ice and gas. Sometimes he found bacteria. Once, he found a moon with simple plants. But today was not like other days. "Commander Sylvain," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "You need to see this." Commander Sylvain walked across the bridge. Her hard outer shell clicked against the metal floor with each step. She had been a scout commander for 20 years and had visited more star systems than most beings could count. She had seen many strange things in space, but she had never heard that tone in Jothik's voice before. "What did you find?" she asked. "A planet, 3rd position from a yellow star. It's..." "Commander, I don't understand the readings." Sylvain looked at the screen. Her breathing holes fluttered rapidly, which happened when she was confused or surprised. She was both. The planet was blue and white and green. Water covered most of it. Clouds swirled in patterns above the surface. That alone was unusual but not impossible. But the atmospheric data made no sense at all. "Run the analysis again," she ordered. "There must be an error." Jothik ran the scan 3 more times. The results stayed the same. The planet's atmosphere contained 21% oxygen. Free oxygen. Just floating in the air. It also had nitrogen, carbon dioxide, and even traces of methane. These gases should not exist together. They should react and destroy each other over time. "It's impossible," Jothik whispered. But that wasn't all. The scans showed something else. Radio waves. Electromagnetic signals broadcasting into space in organized patterns. Someone down there was using technology. Someone was sending messages. Sylvain made a decision quickly. She had to report this immediately. Within 1 hour, she had transmitted all their data back to Throne Prime, the capital world of the Galactic Assembly. Within 3 hours, she received a response. They were ordered to stay in position and continue observing. More ships were coming. By the end of the first day, 5 more vessels had arrived. By the end of the first week, there were 40 ships from a dozen different civilizations, all watching this one small blue planet. Scientists, historians, military observers, and government officials all came to see the impossible world. They called it Sol 3 inches, their official reports. But the beings living on the surface called it something else. They called it Earth, and they called themselves humans. Dr. Keshtar arrived on the second day. She was one of the galaxy's leading experts on xenobiology, the study of alien life. She had spent her entire career examining how life developed on different worlds. She had studied life forms that lived in acid oceans, creatures that breathed methane, organisms that survived in frozen wastes, where the temperature never rose above -200 degrees. She thought she had seen everything. She was wrong. "Show me everything," she told her new research team aboard the science vessel, called Luminous Inquiry. "I want complete biological scans. I want to know what lives down there." What she discovered made her question everything she thought she knew about biology and evolution. The planet was covered in life. Not simple life like bacteria or algae. Complex life. Plants grew on the land masses. Animals lived in the oceans, on the ground, and in the air. There were millions of species. Maybe tens of millions. The sheer diversity was staggering, but it was how they lived that shocked her most. "They eat each other," said Plix, one of her junior researchers. His eye stalks trembled as he examined the data. "The animals hunt and kill other animals for food." Keshtar studied the scans more carefully. Plix was right. The entire planetary ecosystem was based on something called a food chain. Plants converted sunlight into energy. Animals ate the plants. Other animals ate those animals. It was violent and chaotic, and somehow it maintained balance. On every civilized world in the galaxy, species had evolved past such primitive feeding methods billions of years ago. Most species absorbed nutrients directly from their environment through peaceful symbiotic relationships. The idea of one creature killing another creature just to survive was something from the ancient past, from the dark times before intelligence and civilization. But on Earth, it was happening right now. And the dominant species, the humans, were part of this violent system. Keshtar pulled up the evolutionary history of humans. The computer had analyzed their DNA and fossil records by accessing their public databases. What she read made her breathing holes close in shock. Humans had evolved from hunters. Their ancestors had chased prey animals across vast grasslands until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. Even now, millions of years later, human bodies still carried the marks of this heritage. They had long legs for running. They had shoulder joints designed for throwing weapons with accuracy. They could sweat through their skin to cool down, which allowed them to run for hours without stopping. Their eyes faced forward, giving them excellent depth perception for tracking prey. These are predators, Keshtar said quietly. The dominant intelligent species on this planet evolved from apex predators. This had never happened before. Every intelligent species in the galactic assembly had evolved from prey animals, or peaceful herbivores, or symbiotic organisms. The instinct to avoid conflict, to find peaceful solutions, was built into their basic biology. But humans were different. Humans had hunting instincts. They had evolved to chase, to track, to kill. Are they dangerous? Asked Plix. I don't know, Keshtar admitted. She pulled up more data. Humans had spread across their entire planet. They lived in frozen polar regions where the temperature regularly dropped below freezing. They lived in scorching deserts where water was scarce. They lived in dense jungles and high mountains and isolated islands. They had adapted to almost every environment their planet offered. More than that, they had changed their environment. They had built cities of metal and stone. They had dammed rivers, cleared forests, and reshaped landscapes. They had domesticated other species, both plants and animals, bending them to human purposes through selective breeding. They're terraformers, said one of the research assistants. They've terraformed their own planet to suit their needs. Keshtar kept reading. The humans had been tribal and scattered just 10,000 years ago. That was barely a blink of an eye, in evolutionary terms. But in that tiny span of time, they had developed agriculture, writing, mathematics, art, music, and philosophy. They had gone from stone tools to metal working to electricity to computers to nuclear power. Their technological advancement was happening at a speed that shouldn't be possible. What drives them? Plix asked. Why are they advancing so fast? Keshtar thought she might know the answer. She pulled up Earth's geological and climate history. The planet had gone through multiple ice ages, periods of intense volcanism, asteroid impacts, and dramatic climate changes. Life on Earth had faced extinction events multiple times. Species had been wiped out again and again, but life kept coming back. It adapted. It evolved. It survived. And humans were the latest result of this brutal process. They hadn't evolved on a peaceful garden world like most civilized species. They had evolved on a planet that was actively trying to kill them. Their entire evolutionary history was a story of survival against impossible odds. Their planet made them strong, Keshtar said. Every challenge made them adapt. Every disaster forced them to become smarter, more resilient, more creative. They're not just survivors. They're the product of 4 billion years of surviving. The research team fell silent as they absorbed this information. Meanwhile, other ships continued to arrive. The small fleet around Earth grew larger every day. Military analysts studied human conflict. Historians examined human culture. Linguists decoded human languages. Anthropologists watched human behavior through long-range sensors. Everyone agreed on one thing. Humanity was unique. Nothing like them had ever been encountered before. The Galactic Assembly called an emergency session. Representatives from 3,000 civilizations gathered on Throne Prime to discuss the discovery. The humans had no idea this was happening. They continued their daily lives, unaware that hundreds of ships watched them from the darkness beyond their moon. Ambassador Thren of the peaceful Concordat stood before the assembly. His crystalline body refracted the chamber's light into rainbow patterns as he spoke. "We face an unprecedented situation," he said. "We have discovered an intelligent species that defies all our models of how civilizations develop. The question now is, what do we do about it?" The chamber erupted in discussion. Some representatives wanted immediate contact. Others demanded quarantine. A few suggested studying humans for years or even centuries before making any decisions. "They have nuclear weapons," warned Warmind Krelthos of the Armored Dominion. His mechanical voice echoed through the hall. "They have already used such weapons on their own kind. They killed hundreds of thousands in seconds. What happens if we contact them, and they turn that violence toward us?" "They also have art and music," countered Counselor Mira Eth, the Assembly's oldest member. "They write poetry and build museums. They created a global communications network and used it to share knowledge freely. They are more than just their capacity for violence." "But that capacity exists," Krelthos insisted. "We cannot ignore it." Ambassador Thren raised one crystalline hand for silence. "We will not make this decision hastily. I propose we establish a monitoring committee. We will study the humans carefully. We will learn everything we can about them before we decide whether to make contact." The assembly voted. The proposal passed easily. A committee was formed with representatives from 20 different species. Their mission was simple, but enormous. Learn everything about humanity. Understand what they were and what they might become. And most importantly, decide whether humans were ready to learn they were not alone in the universe. Back on Earth, in a small observatory in California, Dr. Sarah Chen stared at her computer screen. She had been searching for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence for 15 years. Every night, she analyzed radio signals from space, hoping to find something that wasn't random noise. Tonight, her equipment had detected something unusual. Multiple signals, all coming from just beyond Neptune's orbit. They were faint but definitely artificial. Someone was out there, and they were using technology. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone. She needed to report this. But as she picked it up, the signals suddenly stopped. All of them at once. As if someone had flipped a switch. Sarah sat back in her chair, staring at the dark screen. Had she imagined it? No. The computer had recorded everything. The signals had been real. Something was out there. Something was watching. She just didn't know what or why. In orbit far above, Commander Sylvine received new orders. All ships were to maintain position, but activate full stealth systems. The humans had detected their presence. That couldn't happen again. They needed more time to study before any contact was made. The fleet went dark. The watching continued. And on that small blue planet, 7 billion humans continued their lives, unaware that their world had just become the most important planet in the galaxy. Dr. Keshtar couldn't sleep. In her species, sleep was necessary only once every 10 days, but stress could make the need come earlier. She had been studying the data from Earth for 3 weeks straight, and nothing made sense. Her body demanded rest, but her mind refused to stop analyzing what she had learned. The problem was simple. Earth shouldn't exist. Not like this. She called a meeting of her entire research team. 20 scientists, from 8 different species, gathered in the conference room of the Luminous Inquiry. Holographic displays filled the air, showing images and data from the planet below. "Let me summarize what we know," Keshtar began. "Then perhaps one of you can explain to me how any of this is possible." She activated the first display. It showed Earth's atmosphere in detail, with each gas represented by a different color. "The atmosphere is 21% oxygen," she said. "This is free oxygen, not bound in compounds. It's just floating in the air. Every student of planetary science knows this should be impossible. Oxygen is reactive. It should combine with other elements and disappear from the atmosphere over time. But something is producing it, said Vex, a scientist from the methane-breathing Gendal species. He wore a protective suit filled with his native atmosphere. The plants. We've observed them. They take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen through photosynthesis. Yes, Keshtar agreed. But here's what makes no sense. Photosynthesis exists on many worlds, but on every other planet we've studied, the oxygen produced is immediately used by the same organisms or their symbiotic partners. It never accumulates in the atmosphere at such high levels. The fact that Earth has maintained this balance for hundreds of millions of years it's unprecedented. She changed the display. Now it showed various Earth animals, from tiny insects to massive whales. These creatures breathe the oxygen, she continued. They use it to burn food for energy. This is called aerobic respiration. It's incredibly efficient. Which is why these animals can grow so large and move so quickly. But it also means they must constantly consume other organisms to fuel their bodies. A young researcher named Trill raised one of her forearms. We've been studying their food chains. The violence is disturbing. Have you seen the videos of what they call lions? They hunt in groups, corner their prey, and tear it apart while it's still alive. Yes, Keshtar said quietly. I've seen them. I've also seen videos of what humans call sharks, crocodiles, and eagles. Earth is full of predators, but here's what you need to understand. This violence isn't random cruelty. It's a carefully balanced system that has existed for hundreds of millions of years. She pulled up a complex diagram showing the relationships between different species on Earth. Lines connected predators to prey to plants, plants to soil organisms, decomposers, back to plants. It looked like a tangled web, but patterns emerged when studied carefully. Remove one species from this system, and others grow out of control, Keshtar explained. Remove the predators, and the herbivores multiply until they eat all the plants. Remove the plants, and everything collapses. It's violent, yes, but it's also stable. More stable than many peaceful ecosystems we've observed. Anman. But the humans, Plix said. Tell us about the humans, Keshtar nodded. This was the part that had kept her awake. She pulled up a rotating three-dimensional model of a human body. Humans are the result of this violent system, she said. Every part of their biology reflects their evolutionary history as hunters and survivors. She zoomed in on the human skeleton. Look at their bone structure. Their bones are dense and strong, reinforced with calcium. When a bone breaks, their body can repair it. The bone actually grows back stronger at the break point. No other species we've encountered has this level of automatic self-repair. The crics can regenerate limbs, Vex pointed out. Yes, but the crics evolved in a peaceful aquatic environment. They developed regeneration to recover from accidental injury. Humans evolved regeneration because they were constantly getting injured in their violent world. Their entire body is designed to survive damage. She changed the display to show the human muscular system. Their muscles contain two types of fibers. Fast-twitch fibers for quick, powerful movements. Slow-twitch fibers for sustained activity over long periods. This combination allows them to both sprint at high speed and run for hours without stopping. Their ancestors used this ability to chase prey animals until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. That's horrifying, Trill said. That's survival, Keshtar corrected. Early humans didn't have claws or fangs or venom. They weren't the strongest or fastest animals on their planet, but they could outlast almost anything. They could track an antelope for 20 kilometers, running the entire time, until the antelope's body overheated and it collapsed. Then the humans would kill it and eat it. She pulled up data on human thermoregulation. Humans cool themselves through sweating. They have millions of sweat glands, covering their skin. When they exercise, liquid seeps through their skin and evaporates, carrying away heat. This is incredibly efficient, but also wasteful. They lose precious water with every drop of sweat. Yet they evolved this system because the advantage it provided was worth the cost. The research team studied the data in silence. Keshtar could see the discomfort on many faces. This was so far from how their own species had evolved. "Let me show you something else," Keshtar said. She pulled up a comparison chart showing oxygen efficiency across different species. Human muscles are not particularly efficient at using oxygen compared to other Earth species. A horse can run faster. A wolf has better endurance. A cheetah can accelerate more quickly. But humans have something else. She zoomed in on the human brain. They have this. The human brain consumes 20% of their body's energy, despite being only 2% of their body mass. It's an enormous investment of resources. But it gave them intelligence, problem-solving ability, and social cooperation that no other Earth species could match. When humans couldn't run fast enough, they made spears and threw them, Keshtar explained. When they couldn't kill large prey alone, they worked in groups and developed complex hunting strategies. When they couldn't survive the cold, they discovered fire and made clothing from animal skins. Every limitation they faced, they overcame through intelligence and tool use. Vex examined the human genome data. They have something in their DNA called a persistence gene. It's related to neurochemical rewards for completing difficult tasks. Basically, their brain gives them pleasure when they overcome challenges. Yes, Keshtar said. Humans are biologically driven to pursue difficult goals. When they accomplish something hard, their brain releases chemicals that make them feel good. This encourages them to keep trying, to keep pushing, to never give up. She pulled up historical climate data from Earth. And they needed this trait because Earth never stopped challenging them. Look at this timeline. Ice ages occur on Earth roughly every 100,000 years. During these ice ages, glaciers cover huge portions of the continents. Temperatures drop dramatically. Many species go extinct. But humans survived, Trill said. Not just survived, they spread during the ice ages. They walked across land bridges that appeared when the oceans froze. They adapted to frozen environments that should have killed them. They learned to hunt woolly mammoths, which were 3 times their size and covered in thick fur and fat. And they did all this without any natural protection against the cold. The research team watched videos of modern humans in various environments. Humans in the Arctic, wearing thick clothing. Humans in the Sahara Desert, managing scarce water supplies. Humans climbing mountains where the air was thin and the temperature was far below freezing. They can adapt to almost anything, Keshtar said. We've observed humans living in environmental extremes that would kill most species. They build shelters, create tools, modify their clothing, adjust their diet. Their technology allows them to survive anywhere. But their bodies are so fragile, Trill objected. We've seen the medical data. They get sick easily. They're vulnerable to hundreds of diseases. Their immune systems are constantly fighting off infections. Yes, Keshtar agreed. Because their planet is full of microscopic predators too. Bacteria, viruses, parasites, fungi. Earth's biosphere is trying to kill them on every level, from the macro to the micro. So, they evolved an adaptive immune system. She displayed data on human immunity. When a new pathogen enters a human body, their immune system studies it, learns how to fight it, and remembers it for years, or even decades. They create custom antibodies for each specific threat. It's like having a biological computer that can program itself to fight any enemy. We have immune systems too, Vex said. Yes, but yours is mostly pre-programmed. You have defenses against the specific threats in your native environment. Humans have that too, but they also have this adaptive layer. They can develop immunity to brand new diseases they've never encountered before. It's why they've been able to spread across their entire planet. Every new environment has different diseases, and humans just adapt to them. Keshtar pulled up videos of human children playing. The team watched as young humans ran, jumped, climbed trees, and engaged in mock combat with each other. Notice how they play, Keshtar said. They're practicing for survival. The chasing games develop their running skills. The climbing develops strength and coordination. The wrestling teaches them about physical combat. Even their play is preparation for their violent world. But they're so emotional about their offspring, Plix observed. We've intercepted thousands of broadcasts about parenting. Humans spend years raising each child, protecting them, teaching them. They form intense emotional bonds with their young, because they have to, Keshtar explained. Human children are born helpless, completely dependent. A newborn human can't walk, can't feed itself, can't survive alone even for a day. They require years of constant care. So humans evolved powerful parental instincts. The emotions you're observing, the love and protectiveness, evolved because any human ancestor who didn't feel that way probably lost their children. She paused, letting the data sink in. Do you see what I'm describing? Humans are a product of their planet. Every trait they have exists because it helped their ancestors survive. The violence, the intelligence, the emotions, the determination, the adaptability. Earth made them this way. Are they still evolving? Asked Trill. Yes. But now it's different. They're not waiting for biological evolution anymore. They're evolving culturally and technologically. Watch. Keshtar pulled up a timeline of human technological development. The team watched as primitive stone tools gave way to bronze, then iron, then steel. Agriculture appeared and spread. Writing systems developed. Mathematics emerged. The scientific method was discovered. 10,000 years ago, humans lived in small tribes and hunted with spears, Keshtar said. 5,000 years ago, they built cities and created writing. 2,000 years ago, they had philosophy, engineering, and basic medicine. 1,000 years ago, they had universities and global trade routes. 200 years ago, they started the Industrial Revolution. 100 years ago, they invented flight. 50 years ago, they landed on their own moon. Today, they have computers, satellites, and space stations. That's impossibly fast, Vex said. Yes, most species take millions of years to progress from stone tools to spaceflight. Humans did it in 10,000 years. Their evolution has shifted from biological to technological, and it's accelerating. Keshtar pulled up the final piece of data. It showed human population growth over time. 2,000 years ago, there were roughly 300 million humans. Today, there are almost 8 billion. They've multiplied by a factor of 25. They've spread to every continent except Antarctica, and they've even established permanent research stations there. They're taking over their planet, Trill said. Yes, Keshtar agreed. But notice what else they're doing. She showed images of national parks, wildlife preserves, and conservation efforts. They're also trying to protect their planet. They've created laws to preserve wilderness areas. They're working to save endangered species. They've started to understand that their own survival depends on maintaining their biosphere's health. Are they learning to be peaceful? Plix asked hopefully. Keshtar considered the question carefully. I don't know. They're still fighting wars. They still have weapons. But they're also building international organizations, creating treaties, establishing global communication networks. They're beginning to see themselves as one species, rather than separate tribes. Whether that trend continues, we can't predict. The meeting ended with more questions than answers. The research team dispersed to continue their studies. Keshtar remained alone in the conference room, staring at the image of Earth floating in the holographic display. She thought about her own species, the gentle herbivores who had evolved on a garden world where food was abundant and predators didn't exist. Her ancestors had developed intelligence slowly, peacefully, over tens of millions of years. They had never faced the challenges humans faced. And yet, humans had gone from stone tools to spaceflight in a tiny fraction of that time. What would humans become if given another 1,000 years? Another 10,000? What would they achieve with that relentless drive to overcome challenges? That biological reward system that made them love difficult goals? Keshtar didn't know. But for the first time in her career, she felt something she had never felt when studying alien life before. She felt afraid. Not of what humans were now, but of what they might become. And she suspected she wasn't the only one in the galaxy who felt that way. Lead analyst Vortine had studied the rise and fall of civilizations for 40 years. He had reviewed the historical records of 10,000 different species across the galaxy. He had seen empires bloom and collapse. He had studied peaceful societies and aggressive ones, religious cultures and scientific ones, unified worlds and fractured ones. Nothing had prepared him for humanity's history. The Galactic Assembly had given him a task that seemed simple at first. Access Earth's historical records and determine whether humans were ready for first contact. Evaluate their cultural development, their moral progress, their capacity for peaceful coexistence with other species. Humans, it turned out, had made this task very easy. They had put their entire history on something called the Internet. Books, documents, videos, photographs, scholarly articles, personal accounts. Everything was there, available to anyone who wanted to look. Vortine had been looking for 3 months now. He wished he could stop. He called a meeting of the Historical Analysis Committee. 12 members from different civilizations gathered in the virtual conference space. Their holographic forms flickered as the connection established itself. "I need to show you what I've found," Vortine said without preamble. "But I warn you, this will be disturbing." He activated the first display. It showed a simple number that grew steadily larger as it counted forward through human history. The number was 15,438. "This is the number of recorded wars in human history," Vortine explained. "Conflicts where organized groups of humans killed other groups of humans. The number is approximate because many ancient wars were never written down. The true number is probably much higher." The committee members shifted uncomfortably. War wasn't unknown in the galaxy. Most species had fought among themselves in their primitive past. But 15,000 conflicts seemed excessive. "Let me be clear about what I mean by war," Vortine continued. "I'm not talking about small raids or brief skirmishes. I'm talking about sustained conflicts involving thousands or millions of combatants. Battles that lasted for years or decades. Events that killed significant portions of human populations." He pulled up a map of Earth that slowly filled with red dots. Each dot represented a major battlefield. By the time the animation finished, the entire planet was covered in red. "There is nowhere on Earth that hasn't seen war," Vortine said. "Every continent, every region, every culture. Humans have fought each other throughout their entire recorded history." He zoomed in on Europe and played a timeline. "Watch this. These are just the European wars over the past 2,000 years." The map flickered with conflict after conflict. Empires expanded and contracted. Borders changed constantly. Cities were conquered and reconquered. Now watch the casualties. Numbers appeared next to each conflict. 100,000 dead. 500,000. 2 million. 20 million. "And this is just one continent," Vortine said quietly. Councillor Miraeth, the oldest member of the committee, spoke for the first time. "Show us their worst conflicts. I need to understand the scale." Vortine nodded. He had been dreading this part. He pulled up files, labeled World War I and World War II. In the 20th century, humans fought 2 conflicts they called World Wars. These involved most of their major nations fighting simultaneously across multiple continents. I'll start with the first one. The display showed maps of Europe, Africa, and Asia covered in battle markers. Vortin provided the summary data. World War I lasted from 1914 to 1918 by their calendar. 4 years of continuous fighting. Approximately 20 million people died. 40 million were wounded. Entire generations of young men were killed. They fought in trenches, using poison gas, machine guns, and artillery. The wounded often suffered for days in flooded trenches, before dying or being rescued. He showed photographs from the war. The committee members looked at images of soldiers standing in mud-filled trenches, their faces blank with exhaustion, images of destroyed cities, images of gas attack victims, images of burial grounds, stretching to the horizon. And then, 20 years later, they did it again, Vortin said. World War II was even worse. The new map showed an even larger conflict spanning the entire globe. The numbers were staggering. This war lasted from 1939 to 1945. 6 years. Approximately 85 million people died. That's roughly 3% of Earth's total population at the time. The war was fought on land, sea, and in the air. Cities were bombed. Civilians were targeted. Entire populations were displaced. He paused before showing the next piece of information. And then humans did something that changed everything. They developed nuclear weapons. The display showed the mushroom clouds over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Vortin provided the details. Along the 14, nuclear weapons work by splitting atoms. The explosion releases massive amounts of energy in seconds. The temperature at the center of the blast reaches millions of degrees. Everything within a certain radius is instantly vaporized. Beyond that radius, the heat causes fires and severe burns. Beyond that, the shockwave destroys buildings and kills through flying debris. And then there's the radiation, which poisons survivors and causes death over weeks or months. Humans used these weapons twice at the end of World War II. They killed approximately 200,000 people in seconds. And here's what I need you to understand. That was just the beginning. He pulled up data on nuclear testing. After the war, humans developed more powerful nuclear weapons. They tested over 2,000 nuclear devices on their own planet. 2,000 explosions, releasing radioactive material into their environment. They poisoned their own atmosphere to develop better weapons. Ambassador Thren leaned forward. Did they use these weapons again? No, Vortin said. They came close several times. They built enough nuclear weapons to destroy their entire planet many times over. But they never used them in war again. The fear of total annihilation kept them from doing so. They called it mutually assured destruction. The idea that any nuclear war would kill everyone prevented anyone from starting one. So, they learned from their mistakes. Counselor Mira Eth said hopefully, perhaps, or perhaps they simply learned to fear the consequences. Let me show you more of their history. Vortin spent the next hour presenting a catalog of human atrocities. The Mongol conquests that killed 40 million people. The European colonization of the Americas that destroyed entire civilizations through disease and violence. The Atlantic slave trade that captured and transported 12 million Africans in brutal conditions. The Holocaust, where Nazi Germany systematically murdered 6 million Jews and millions of others they considered undesirable. They document everything, Vortin said. That's what disturbs me most. They record their atrocities in careful detail. They build museums to remember them. They teach their children about the terrible things their ancestors did. Is that not a good sign? Asked Ambassador Thren. They acknowledge their past instead of hiding from it. I don't know, Vortin admitted. Are they learning from these memories, or just taking pride in their capacity for violence? Look at this. He showed human military museums filled with weapons and war memorabilia. He showed monuments to famous generals and conquerors. He showed how humans celebrated their military victories with holidays and parades. They honor their warriors, Vortin said. Soldiers are considered heroes in most human cultures. They're respected and admired. The capacity for violence is seen as virtuous when directed at their enemies. But what about their culture? Counselor Miraeth asked. Surely they have produced more than just war. Vortin pulled up new files. Yes, this is what confuses me most. Alongside all this violence, humans have created remarkable cultural achievements. He showed artwork from ancient Egypt, Greece, China, and India. He showed Renaissance paintings and sculptures. He showed modern art installations and digital creations. They make beautiful things, he said. They compose music that evokes complex emotions. They write poetry and literature that explores the deepest questions of existence. They build monuments and cathedrals that take generations to complete. He played examples of human music. A Bach fugue, complex and mathematical. A Beethoven symphony, powerful and emotional. A jazz improvisation, spontaneous and creative. Traditional folk songs from dozens of cultures. This is what makes them so difficult to understand, Vortin said. The same species that commits genocide also creates the Sistine Chapel. The same hands that build nuclear weapons also play piano concertos. They contain multitudes. He pulled up human philosophical texts. Works by Plato, Confucius, Buddha, Kant, and thousands of others. They've spent millennia thinking about ethics and morality, Vortin said. They've developed complex philosophical systems about justice, virtue, duty, and the good life. They debate questions about the nature of reality, consciousness, and existence. And yet, they keep fighting wars. Ambassador Thren studied the data carefully. It seems they have ideals they aspire to but frequently fail to achieve. Is that not common among developing species? Yes, but the gap between their ideals and their actions is enormous. Look at this. Vortin showed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a document created by the United Nations after World War II. It proclaimed fundamental rights for all humans. Freedom from slavery, freedom from torture, equality before the law, freedom of expression. They wrote this beautiful document, declaring that all humans deserve dignity and rights, Vortin said. And then, in the decades that followed, they violated every principle it contains. Wars continued. Torture continued. Slavery still exists in some regions. They profess noble values but struggle to live up to them. He showed more recent history. The Rwandan genocide in 1994, where 800,000 people were killed in 100 days. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. The ongoing conflicts in Syria, Yemen, and other regions. The rise of terrorism and the global war against it. They're still fighting, Vortin said. As of right now, there are active armed conflicts in dozens of locations around their planet. The violence hasn't stopped. The committee sat in silence, processing the enormity of what they'd learned. Finally, Warmind Krelthos spoke. These are the most dangerous beings we've ever encountered, he said. They've developed nuclear weapons before achieving a unified planetary government. They have the capacity to destroy their own world, but lack the wisdom to prevent themselves from doing so. We should quarantine this system immediately. Wait, said Counselor Miraeth. Let Vortin finish his report. Is there more? Yes, Vortin said. There's something else I need to show you. Something that gives me hope. He pulled up statistics on human violence over time. Graphs showed war deaths as a percentage of total population, declining steadily from ancient times to the present. Humans are becoming less violent, Vortin explained, not in absolute numbers, which have grown with their population, but proportionally, a smaller percentage of humans die in wars now than at any time in their history. In ancient times, up to 15% of humans died violently. Today, it's less than 1%. He showed more data. They're also developing international institutions to prevent war. The United Nations, international courts, peacekeeping forces, treaties, and agreements. These institutions are imperfect and often fail, but they exist. Humans are trying to create structures that promote peace. They're also developing empathy, Vortin continued. Watch how their moral circle has expanded over time. He showed a timeline of human rights movements. The abolition of slavery, women's suffrage, civil rights movements, LGBTQ rights, animal welfare movements, environmental protection. They're slowly recognizing that more and more beings deserve moral consideration, Vortin said. In ancient times, humans only cared about their immediate tribe. Everyone else was an enemy to be killed or enslaved. Over time, they expanded their definition of US to include larger tribes, nations, races, and eventually the entire human species. Now they're beginning to extend moral consideration to animals, and even to their planet itself. He pulled up videos of humanitarian efforts. Doctors Without Borders treating the sick in war zones. International aid organizations feeding the hungry. Peacekeepers separating combatants. Rescue workers saving lives during disasters. They help each other, Vortin said, even across national and cultural boundaries. When disasters strike, humans from other countries send aid. They donate money, food, medical supplies. They volunteer to help strangers they'll never meet. But is this enough? Asked Ambassador Thren. Are they progressing fast enough to be trusted with knowledge of the greater galaxy? I don't know, Vortin admitted. Their technology is advancing faster than their wisdom. They have global communication, but they spread misinformation and propaganda. They have the capacity to save their planet from environmental destruction, but they struggle to cooperate on doing so. He pulled up one final piece of data. It showed humanity's space program, the Apollo missions, the International Space Station, the Mars rovers, plans for permanent moon bases, and Mars colonies. They're trying to leave their planet, Vortin said. They're reaching for the stars. They've sent messages into space, hoping to contact alien life. They've been searching for signals from other civilizations for decades. They want to know if they're alone in the universe. And when they find out they're not alone? Warmind, Krelthos asked. What happens then? That's the question. Vortin said. Will they react with curiosity or fear? Will they seek cooperation or conflict? Will first contact with alien species be the event that finally unifies them? Or will it trigger their worst instincts? The committee debated for hours. Some argued for immediate quarantine. Others wanted to make contact. A few suggested waiting decades or centuries to see if humans continued their apparent moral progress. In the end, they made no decision. Instead, they forwarded their findings to the full Galactic Assembly with a recommendation. The humans were unique, dangerous, creative, violent, compassionate, brilliant, and terrifying all at once. The decision about what to do with them was too important for a committee alone. The entire galaxy would need to decide, and they would need to decide soon, because humans weren't waiting. Their space program was growing more ambitious every year. Their telescopes were getting better. Their radio arrays were expanding. Eventually, they would detect the fleet watching them from beyond their moon. When that happened, ready or not, first contact would occur. The only question was whether humanity would survive it. The Grand Assembly Chamber on Throne Prime had never been so full. Representatives from 3,000 civilizations filled the vast space. Some stood on the main floor. Others floated in sections designed for aquatic or gaseous species. Still, others appeared as holographic projections from distant worlds. All had come to debate the same question. What should be done about humanity? The debate had been scheduled for 1 week. It was now entering its 3rd week, and no consensus had been reached. The chamber was divided into 3 main factions, and the arguments grew more heated with each passing day. Ambassador Thren of the Peaceful Concordat stood at the central podium. His crystalline body refracted the chamber's light as he called for order. "We will now hear from Warmind Krelthos of the Armored Dominion," Thren announced. "He wishes to present the case for immediate quarantine." Krelthos stepped forward. Unlike most representatives, he wasn't a biological being. The Armored Dominion had uploaded their consciousness into mechanical bodies millions of years ago. Krelthos appeared as a sleek humanoid form made of dark metal, glowing with internal energy. "Thank you, Ambassador," Krelthos said. His voice was synthesized but carried emotional weight. "I will be brief, because the situation is clear. Humanity represents a threat to galactic stability, and must be contained." He activated a holographic display showing human weapons throughout history. Stone axes, bronze swords, crossbows, guns, missiles, nuclear bombs. "Look at their technological progression," Krelthos said. "Every advance in human technology has been quickly weaponized. They invented powered flight, and within 15 years used it to drop bombs on cities. They split the atom and immediately built weapons of mass destruction. They developed computers and now use them for cyber warfare." The display changed to show battle scenes from human history. Ancient armies clashing with swords, medieval knights in armor, 20th century warfare with tanks and bombers, modern drone strikes. "Violence is not just part of human nature," Krelthos continued. "It's central to their entire civilization. They've been fighting each other continuously for their entire recorded history. They've developed countless philosophies justifying war. They celebrate their warriors and build monuments to military victory." He pulled up data on human military spending. "They currently spend almost 2 trillion credits per year on weapons and armies. That's money that could feed their hungry, heal their sick, or advance their science. Instead, they spend it on weapons to kill each other," the chamber murmured. The number was shocking even to species familiar with conflict. "Now imagine giving these beings access to our technology," Krelthos said. "Imagine humans with faster-than-light travel, with energy weapons, with planetary defense systems. They would spread their violence across the galaxy like a disease." He changed the display to show human science fiction, movies and books about alien invasions, interstellar wars, galactic empires built on conquest. "This is how they imagine first contact," Krelthos said, "with suspicion and violence. They've been preparing mentally for hostile aliens for over a century. When they discover we exist, their first instinct will be fear, and fear leads to aggression." He deactivated the display and faced the chamber directly. "I propose we establish an energy barrier around the Sol system. Nothing gets in or out. We monitor them from a distance. In 10,000 years, perhaps 20,000, we check on them again. If they've evolved beyond their violent nature, we reconsider. If not, we maintain the quarantine indefinitely." "You're proposing a prison," someone called from the audience. "I'm proposing survival," Krelthos responded. "Ours and theirs. Because if we make contact too soon, we may be forced to defend ourselves. And I don't want to see what happens when our weapons meet their tactical creativity." He returned to his seat. The chamber erupted in discussion. Ambassador Thren had to call for order 3 times before the noise subsided. "We will now hear from Speaker Nala of the Explorers Coalition," Thren announced. Speaker Nala approached the podium. She was a tall, slender being with iridescent skin that changed color with her emotions. Currently, it showed patterns of blue and gold, indicating careful optimism. "Warmind Krelthos paints a frightening picture," Nala began. "But he shows only one side of humanity. Yes, they've fought wars. Yes, they've developed weapons. But they've also created art, music, literature, and philosophy. They've sent probes to explore their solar system, not to conquer it, but to understand it." She activated her own display, showing human achievements. The Hubble Space Telescope's images of distant galaxies. The Mars rovers. Exploring an alien world, The International Space Station, where humans from different nations worked together in space. The same species that builds bombs also builds these, Nala said. They explore because they're curious. They ask questions because they want to understand. These are not the traits of a species doomed to violence. She pulled up data on human scientific progress. In just 500 years, they've gone from believing Earth was the center of the universe to understanding the Big Bang, quantum mechanics, and genetic engineering. They've made more scientific progress in 5 centuries than most species make in 50,000 years. They're brilliant problem solvers, Nala continued. When they face a challenge, they don't give up. They try different approaches until something works. This persistence, this refusal to accept failure, is exactly what makes them perfect candidates for first contact. She showed videos of humans helping each other during disasters. Firefighters rushing into burning buildings. Doctors treating patients during epidemics. Volunteers rescuing people from floods. They're also deeply compassionate, Nala said. They risk their lives to save strangers. They adopt orphaned children from other cultures. They create charities to help the poor and sick. These behaviors come from the same emotional core as their capacity for violence. They feel intensely and care deeply. She changed the display to show humanity's message plaques sent on the Voyager spacecraft. Images showing human diversity, mathematical formulas, and a message of greeting. They want to meet us, Nala said simply. They've been trying to contact alien life for decades. They've sent messages and listened for responses. They imagine first contact with hope, not just fear. Yes, some of their fiction shows hostile aliens, but just as much shows peaceful cooperation and cultural exchange. She faced the chamber directly. I propose immediate first contact. We introduce ourselves, offer friendship, and invite them to join the Galactic Assembly as observers. Let them learn from us. Let them see that cooperation is possible. Give them a goal to aspire to. And if they respond with violence, someone called out. Then we defend ourselves, Nala replied. But I don't believe they will. Humans are survivors. They're adaptable. When they encounter a new situation, they assess it and respond appropriately. If we approach peacefully, with open hands and genuine friendship, I believe they'll respond in kind. She returned to her seat. The chamber erupted again, this time with more positive energy. Many representatives seemed swayed by her arguments. Ambassador Thren called for order once more. We will now hear from historian Vortine, who has studied humanity extensively. He will present the observer's position. Vortine approached the podium slowly. He appeared tired, as if the weight of his research had exhausted him. His tentacles moved sluggishly as he activated his own presentation. I've spent 4 months studying every aspect of human civilization, he began. I've reviewed their wars and their artwork, their genocides and their hospitals, their weapons and their space telescopes. And I've come to a conclusion that satisfies neither the quarantine faction nor the contact faction. He pulled up a complex chart showing human development over time. Humans are changing rapidly, in ways we've never seen before. Look at this data. The chart showed violence declining, education increasing, life expectancy rising, child mortality falling, literacy spreading, and scientific output accelerating. By every measurable metric, humans are improving, Vortine said. They're becoming less violent, more educated, healthier, and more scientifically advanced. The rate of change is extraordinary. In just 200 years, they've transformed from isolated agricultural societies into a globally connected technological civilization. He zoomed in on the most recent decades. The pace is accelerating. They've made more progress in the last 50 years than in the previous 500. They're changing so fast that predictions become unreliable. So you support contact, someone called out. No, Vortine said. Not yet. Because their technology is advancing faster than their wisdom. They have nuclear weapons, but no world government. They have global communication but no consensus on truth. They have the ability to change their planet's climate, but can't agree on whether to stop it. He showed images of Earth's environmental problems: pollution, deforestation, species extinction, ocean acidification, plastic waste. They're damaging their own planet, Vortin said. Not out of malice, but out of short-term thinking. They prioritize immediate economic gains over long-term survival. This is the behavior of a species that hasn't fully matured. Then you support quarantine, another voice called. No, Vortin said again. Because quarantine assumes they can't change. And the data clearly shows they are changing. Quarantine also requires us to make a moral choice. Do we have the right to imprison an entire species because we fear what they might become? He deactivated his display and spoke directly to the chamber. I propose a third option. We continue to observe, but we prepare for contact. We study them for 5 more years. We watch how they handle their current challenges. We look for signs of increased cooperation, improved environmental stewardship, and reduced conflict. During this time, we create a first contact plan. We choose our representatives carefully. We prepare messages that will resonate with human culture. We anticipate their questions and prepare honest answers. We decide what technology we'll share and what we'll withhold. We think through every possible scenario. And then, in 5 years, we make contact. Not because we're certain they're ready, but because waiting longer serves no purpose. They're already detecting anomalies in their astronomical data. They're getting better at analyzing radio signals. They will discover us eventually. Better that we control when and how it happens. He paused, letting his words sink in. But here's what I need you to understand. Whatever we decide, we must accept that humanity will change us as much as we change them. They're unlike any species we've encountered. Their presence in the Galactic Assembly will challenge our assumptions about civilization, intelligence, and morality. We evolved on peaceful worlds. We developed wisdom slowly, over millions of years. We learned cooperation because our environments taught us it was necessary. But humans learned cooperation despite their environment. They chose peace when violence would have been easier. That choice, made against biological instinct and evolutionary pressure, represents a kind of moral achievement we've never had to attempt. They scare us because they're different. But perhaps we need different. Perhaps the galaxy has become too comfortable, too safe, too predictable. Perhaps we need the chaos and creativity that comes from a species that learned to thrive in chaos. Vortin returned to his seat. The chamber fell silent. Representatives looked at each other, processing what they'd heard. Ambassador Thren stood at the podium. We've now heard from all 3 major factions. The debate will continue, but I want to add my own observation. He activated a display showing humanity's Voyager spacecraft, now traveling through interstellar space, carrying its golden record of human culture. Humans sent this craft into space knowing they'd never see it again, Thren said. They included music, images, and greetings in dozens of languages. They sent it because they hoped someone would find it someday. Someone they'd never meet. They wanted to say, "We exist. We create beauty. And we hope you're out there." That's profound loneliness, Thren continued. But also, profound hope. They sent art into the void because they believed connection was possible. I think that belief matters. He looked around the chamber. We're debating whether they're ready for us. But perhaps the better question is whether we're ready for them. Are we ready to welcome a species that will challenge everything we think we know? Are we ready for the energy and chaos and creativity they'll bring? Are we ready to be changed? The debate continued for 3 more days. Arguments were made and countered. Proposals were offered and rejected. The chamber divided and reformed along new lines. Species that usually agreed found themselves on opposite sides. Alliances shifted, Finally, after 4 weeks of debate, Ambassador Thren called for a vote. The proposal was Historian Vorteen's compromise, 5 more years of observation, followed by first contact under carefully planned conditions. The vote wasn't unanimous. A significant minority wanted immediate quarantine. A smaller group wanted immediate contact. But the majority agreed that careful, planned contact after additional observation was the wisest course. The resolution passed. 5 years. That's how long humanity had left before everything changed. 5 years to solve their problems, reduce their conflicts, and prove they were ready for the galaxy. They had no idea they were being tested. No idea their entire future hung in the balance. And that, several representatives agreed, was probably for the best. The 5 years passed faster than anyone expected. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the control room of the Arecibo Telescope Replacement Facility, staring at her screen with trembling hands. She had been searching for signals from extraterrestrial intelligence for 20 years now. Every night, she analyzed radio waves from space, hoping to find something that wasn't random noise. Tonight, she had found something impossible. "Run it again," she told her assistant Marcus. "Triple-check everything." Marcus ran the analysis for the 3rd time. The results stayed the same. Multiple artificial signals, all coming from just beyond Neptune's orbit. They weren't even trying to hide anymore. "Sarah," Marcus said quietly, "there are hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They're all out there, just watching us." Sarah picked up her phone and called the director. Then she called the National Science Foundation. Then she called the White House Science Advisor. Within 3 hours, every major government on Earth knew the truth. Humanity was not alone, and whatever was out there had been watching them for years. The news broke simultaneously across every major news network. Someone leaked it, or maybe several people did. Alien spacecraft were positioned beyond their solar system. Had been there for years. Were watching Earth right now. The response was chaos. Stock markets crashed. Some people panicked and stockpiled supplies. Religious leaders gave emergency sermons, offering competing interpretations. Scientists appeared on every news channel trying to explain what was happening. Governments held emergency sessions, but underneath the panic and confusion, another emotion began to emerge. Not fear, but excitement, curiosity, hope. They weren't alone. After centuries of wondering, after decades of searching, humans finally had their answer. Someone else was out there. The question now was what to do about it. The United Nations called an emergency General Assembly session. Every nation sent representatives. For once, the usual political disagreements seemed trivial. This was bigger than borders or ideologies. This affected all of humanity. "We need to respond," said the Secretary General. "We need to send a message." "What message?" someone asked. "Welcome? Go away? Why have you been spying on us?" "All of those," said Dr. Chen, who had been invited to speak. "We need to acknowledge that we see them. We need to express openness to communication. But we also need to make clear that we're not helpless, that we can defend ourselves if necessary." A team of linguists, mathematicians, and diplomats worked through the night crafting a message. They used mathematical language that any technological species should understand. Prime numbers to show intelligence, pictures of Earth and humans to show who was speaking, and a simple statement translated into symbolic logic. "We see you. We are here. We come in peace. But we can defend ourselves. Please respond." The message was broadcast on multiple frequencies toward the fleet beyond Neptune. Then, humanity waited. The response came 6 hours later. Every screen on Earth, every phone, every computer, every television suddenly displayed the same image simultaneously. A geometric pattern that resolved into a star map showing Earth's position in the galaxy. Then a simple animation showing a single spacecraft approaching Earth slowly with no weapons visible. The meaning was clear. They were coming. Peacefully. One ship. The world held its breath. Aboard the approaching vessel, Ambassador Thren reviewed the first contact protocols one more time. He had volunteered for this mission, believing his species' peaceful nature made them ideal for this crucial moment. But now, actually approaching Earth, he felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Fear. Not fear of humans. Exactly. Fear of making a mistake. Fear of saying the wrong thing or moving the wrong way. Fear of starting an incident that could escalate. This moment would define human-alien relations for potentially thousands of years. The pressure was enormous. Approaching Earth orbit, his pilot announced. They're tracking us with hundreds of sensors. Military assets are on high alert worldwide. Expected, Thren said calmly. Continue on course. Make no sudden movements. Broadcast peaceful intent continuously. The ship entered orbit exactly where the humans expected, over the United Nations headquarters in New York. Thren had chosen this location deliberately. Not a military base. Not a single nation's capital. The place where humans came together to solve problems collectively. He sent a message requesting permission to address the UN General Assembly. The response came quickly. Permission granted. Thren prepared himself. He had studied human psychology extensively. He knew they responded better to individuals than abstractions. He knew they valued directness and honesty. He knew they were frightened but also curious. He materialized in the General Assembly Hall, using a teleportation technology that was carefully calibrated to be impressive but not threatening. He appeared at the front of the chamber, his crystalline body refracting the lights into rainbow patterns. The hall was packed, every seat filled, representatives from every nation, press from around the world. Scientists, religious leaders, military officers, all staring at him in absolute silence. Thren had prepared a speech. Formal greetings. Explanations of the Galactic Assembly. Carefully worded descriptions of what would happen next. But as he looked at the faces staring at him, filled with wonder and fear and desperate hope, he changed his mind. Hello, he said simply, in English. His translator made his voice sound warm and gentle. My name is Thren. I come from a place very far from here, and I bring you a message. You are not alone. You have never been alone. We've been out here, waiting for you to be ready to meet us. The hall stayed silent, but he could see tears forming in many eyes. Some people were crying openly. I know you have many questions, Thren continued. I will answer them honestly. But first, I need you to understand something important. We've been watching you for 5 years. We've studied your history, your cultures, your art, your science. He paused, letting that sink in. We've encountered thousands of intelligent species in our exploration of the galaxy. But we've never met anyone quite like you. Your planet tried to kill you. And you survived. You faced challenges that would have destroyed most species, and you thrived. You developed technology faster than should be possible. You created beauty in the midst of violence. You chose cooperation, despite being born into competition. You scare us, Thren admitted. Because you're different from us. We evolved on peaceful worlds. You evolved on a world that demanded strength. We learned wisdom slowly. You learned it quickly, in the midst of chaos. He looked around the chamber. But we've decided to trust you, to extend our hand in friendship, to invite you to join us in exploring the galaxy together, because we think the galaxy needs what you bring. Your persistence, your creativity, your refusal to accept that any problem is unsolvable. The Secretary General stood slowly. Why now? Why did you wait 5 years to contact us? Honestly, Thren said, we were debating whether you were ready. Whether we were ready. Some of our people wanted to quarantine your system, to keep you contained until you evolved beyond violence. Others wanted immediate contact. We compromised. We watched, we learned, and now we're here. What did you see in those 5 years? Someone called out. Progress, Thren said. Not perfection. You still fight wars. You still damage your planet. You still have poverty and suffering. But you're trying to fix these problems. Your conflicts are smaller than they used to be. Your environmental awareness is growing. Your international cooperation is increasing. You're young, but you're learning. A military officer stood. Are you a threat to us? No, Thren said firmly. We have weapons that could destroy your planet, but we have no interest in using them. We're explorers and scientists, not conquerors. We follow strict ethical guidelines about interfering with developing species. We wouldn't be here if we wanted to harm you. What happens now? Asked the Secretary General. That's up to you, Thren replied. I'm here to invite humanity to join the Galactic Assembly as provisional members. You would send observers to learn about our civilizations. We would send cultural ambassadors to Earth. We would share some technology, though not all of it. Not yet. You would maintain your independence and sovereignty. We're offering friendship and knowledge, not control. What do you want in return? Someone asked. The same thing you want, Thren said. To learn, to grow, to explore together. We have 3,000 member species, and each one has taught us something valuable. We believe humanity has much to teach us too. The chamber erupted in discussion. Delegates shouted questions. Some argued for accepting immediately. Others urged caution. The noise grew until the Secretary General called for order. We need time to discuss this, she said. To consult with our governments and our people. Of course, Thren said. Take all the time you need. I'll remain in orbit. Whenever you're ready to talk more, just send a message. He teleported back to his ship. The General Assembly immediately went into closed session. The debates would continue for weeks, but Thren knew the answer already. He had seen it in their eyes. The hunger for knowledge, the desire for connection, the excitement at finally having proof they weren't alone. Humans would say yes. The only question was, how quickly? The debates did continue for weeks. Every nation had opinions. Every religious organization issued statements. Scientists argued about the implications. Philosophers debated the meaning. Ordinary people around the world watched and waited. But underneath all the debate, a consensus was forming. Humanity wanted this. They wanted to explore. They wanted to learn. They wanted to meet the thousands of species waiting out there among the stars. 2 months after Thren's appearance, the United Nations held a vote. Should humanity accept the invitation to join the Galactic Assembly as provisional members? The vote was overwhelming. 173 nations voted yes. 5 voted no. 23 abstained. The Secretary General sent a message to Thren. We accept your invitation. When do we start? 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 Thren's response was immediate. Right now. Over the next 6 months, everything changed. A Galactic Assembly delegation arrived on Earth. Scientists from a dozen species, all eager to study this impossible planet where life thrived despite hostile conditions. They set up research stations in partnership with human scientists. Knowledge began flowing in both directions. Human ambassadors traveled to Throne Prime. 5 carefully chosen individuals, representing different cultures and perspectives. They walked through the Grand Assembly Chamber, their eyes wide with wonder at the thousands of species gathered there. When they spoke before the Assembly, they were nervous but honest. They acknowledged humanity's violent past without shame or excuse. They presented it as lessons learned, as growth achieved, as proof that change was possible. We know what we've been, said Ambassador Williams, the delegation leader. We've fought each other for thousands of years. We've made terrible mistakes. We've hurt our planet and each other. But we've also loved and built and dreamed. We've created art and music and philosophy. We've reached for the stars because we believed something better was possible. You've watched us at our worst, Williams continued. And somehow, you still invited us here. We don't take that lightly. We don't expect you to trust us immediately. Trust is earned. But we promise you this: we will learn from you. We will grow. And we will prove that your faith in us was justified. The assembly gave them a standing ovation. Well, the species that had legs stood. The others expressed approval in their own ways. But the meaning was clear. Humanity was welcome. Back on Earth, galactic technology began arriving. Not weapons or ships. Those would come later, if ever. But medical technology that could cure diseases. Agricultural techniques that could end hunger. Energy systems that could replace fossil fuels. Water purification methods that could provide clean water to everyone. The aliens were careful to introduce technology gradually. Too much, too fast could destabilize human society. But even the limited sharing transformed lives. Children in poverty received medicine. Farmers in drought-stricken regions grew abundant crops. Cities powered by pollution were cleaned by fusion reactors. Humans responded with gratitude but also with questions. How does this work? Can we improve it? What else is possible? And the aliens discovered something remarkable. Humans didn't just accept new technology passively. They tore it apart to understand it. They found ways to improve it. They asked questions that hadn't occurred to species who had used these technologies for thousands of years. They're extraordinary, Dr. Keshtar reported to the assembly after 6 months of collaboration. Human scientists are adapting to alien concepts faster than any species on record. They're proposing modifications to our technology that actually work. They're thinking in ways we never considered. One. It's their problem-solving instinct, she explained. They evolved to face challenges, so they see every new technology as a puzzle to solve. They're not satisfied with just using it. They want to understand it, improve it, make it their own. Human engineers started working alongside alien engineers on starship designs. Human doctors collaborated with alien biologists on new medical treatments. Human artists created works that blended human and alien aesthetics in ways neither species could achieve alone. But the greatest impact was psychological. Humans were no longer alone. That knowledge changed everything. Wars didn't stop immediately. Political conflicts continued. But something shifted in human consciousness. The petty disputes between nations seemed smaller when viewed against the backdrop of a galaxy full of intelligent life. The idea that all humans were fundamentally the same became easier to accept when the alternative was thousands of truly alien species. "We're all human" became a rallying cry for unity movements worldwide. Not to exclude aliens, but to recognize that despite their differences, all humans shared common ground that was precious and worth protecting. Environmental movements gained momentum. If humanity wanted to be respected among the stars, they needed to take care of their planet. Earth became a point of pride, a unique world worth preserving. 1 year after first contact, Ambassador Thren stood before the United Nations again. He had been invited to speak on the anniversary. "You've exceeded our expectations," he said simply. "In 1 year, you've integrated into the galactic community faster than species that had centuries. You've embraced learning. You've shared your own knowledge freely. You've proven that our decision to trust you was correct. I've been asked to inform you that the Galactic Assembly has voted to accelerate your provisional membership. In 5 years, instead of the usual 50, you'll be eligible for full membership, full access to all technologies, full participation in galactic governance, equal standing with species millions of years older than you." The chamber erupted in applause. Thren waited for silence before continuing. "But I need to be honest with you about what that means. The galaxy isn't perfect. We have disputes. We have species that don't get along. We have problems we haven't solved in thousands of years. We're inviting you, not into paradise, but into complicated reality. And that's why we need you, Thren said. Because you're good at solving complicated problems. You've spent your entire existence overcoming challenges. Your whole planet is a testament to the power of persistence and adaptation. The galaxy has become comfortable, stable. Some would say stagnant. We've had peace for so long we've forgotten how to change. But you haven't. You know how to adapt, how to innovate, how to keep trying when others would give up. You scare us, Thren admitted again. But that's good. Comfortable isn't always healthy. We need the chaos and creativity and energy you bring. We need your perspective. We need humans. He paused, his crystalline form catching the light. So, welcome. Welcome to the galaxy, humanity. We're excited to see what you'll do next. Because if your history has taught us anything, it's that humans never stop surprising us. The applause this time was deafening. That night, around the world, people looked up at the stars with new understanding. Those points of light weren't just burning gas millions of miles away. They were destinations, places to explore, homes to thousands of species who were now friends and colleagues. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in her observatory, the same place where she'd first detected the alien fleet. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, the fear and wonder of that first detection, the chaos of the announcement, the anxiety of waiting for first contact, the joy when Thren had appeared and said, "You are not alone." She pulled up her computer and started writing a paper about new collaborative research projects between human and alien scientists. There was so much to learn, so much to discover, so much to explore, and humanity had all the time in the galaxy to do it. On Throne Prime, in the Grand Assembly Chamber, Counselor Miraeth stood before the 3,000 gathered species. She was one of the few who remembered the debate about humanity from 6 years ago, who remembered the fear and uncertainty about whether to make contact. "I want to acknowledge that some of us were wrong about humans," she said. "Myself included. I worried they would bring violence and chaos. They've certainly brought chaos, but not the kind I feared. They've brought the chaos of new ideas, of questions we stopped asking millennia ago, of challenges to assumptions we'd accepted as truth. They've made us think harder and look at old problems with fresh eyes. In just 1 year, human scientists have contributed to 17 major research projects. Human engineers have improved 12 existing technologies. Human artists have created works that are being studied across the galaxy. And human philosophers have restarted debates we thought we'd settled long ago. They're making us better," Miraeth said. "Not by being perfect themselves, but by refusing to accept that any of us are perfect. They keep pushing, keep questioning, keep trying to improve everything they touch. Warmind, Krelthos warned us that humans were dangerous. He was right. They're dangerous to complacency, to stagnation, to the comfortable assumption that we've figured everything out." She looked around the chamber. "I'm glad we took the risk. I'm glad we said yes, because the galaxy needed humans. We just didn't know it until they arrived." The chamber filled with sounds of agreement from thousands of different species, each expressing approval in their own way. And somewhere in the Sol system, orbiting the third planet from a small yellow star, human children were learning about alien cultures in school. Human teenagers were dreaming about traveling to distant worlds. Human scientists were planning research missions to explore strange new environments. The impossible planet had produced an impossible species. And that impossible species was about to show the galaxy what humans did best. They persevered. They adapted. They dreamed. And they never, ever gave up on reaching for the stars. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly what it needed.